Let's go over a couple hands here real quick, as promised. So in the first interesting one that develops, look down at ace-5 of clubs from under the gun, make standard raise to 30. Get 4 callers before the small blind puts in a 3-bet. And he makes it $170 to go. I'm trying to find the proper angle here, so not too much glare. Nice Eiffel Tower scenery in the background. So small blind puts in a 3-bet to 170. Big blind folds and it's back to me. And I think if there was ever a time to put in a 4-bet bluff, it's this time. Conditions are pretty perfect here. We have an ace blocker. The small blind is a very competent player who is very capable of putting in a squeeze. We have ace-5 suited, which is one of the best hands that you can put in a 4-bet bluff with, I think. If we happen to get called, then the hand is very playable. Suited, flush ability, wheel ability, and we have an ace blocker. And I've been playing pretty snug, even though I've just been super card dead. Nobody really knows that. It probably looks like I've just been playing extremely tight, and I expect to get a lot of credit for a 4-bet, especially with my initial raise coming from under the gun. So all the factors are in place. Couldn't ask for a much better spot to put in a 4-bet bluff. So I go ahead and I make a 4-bet. I raise to 480, I believe. The first caller folds, and the second caller does not fold. The second caller jams all in for $550. So not the result that I was, not the situation that I was looking for exactly. It folds back around to the small blind, who thinks for a while and then makes the fold. No choice here at this point. I'm gonna call it off, obviously. I still expect to be in pretty good shape a decent amount of the time. I don't expect to be completely dead. I don't expect to run into pocket aces all that often. And as long as we're not up against aces, then we still stand a fair chance. So I make the call, and the board runs out 7-7-4-3-4. The under the gun +2 player says ship it full house, which is a little confusing. And then he shows us Jack-7 of clubs, which is also confusing, but not really that confusing. I've played with this player before. Not really all that shocking, I guess. But you know what? Sometimes they get there. And I will take this situation any day, anytime. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's always a little bit unexpected when they show Jack-7 of clubs all in pre-flop, but appreciate the gamble. Unfortunately, the gamble does not work out in our favor this time. Gonna lose this hand. And honestly, these sorts of situations are the absolute least tilting for me. I am more than happy to get the money in with the best hand. Obviously, we didn't have him crushed. I don't know, what is it, 60-40, something like that in this sort of a situation. But anytime I get the money in good and lose, I am not tilted about those sorts of situations. And especially if someone is happily gambling on my table and they end up winning a hand, even if they get the money in with the worst of it and come out on top, those kinds of situations don't really bother me that much. The spots where I make a mistake, a somewhat blatant mistake, which definitely happens, as you guys know, those spots tend to tilt me a little bit more, or a lot more, actually. These kinds of spots, happy to take the action anytime. All right, in this hand, the under the gun player raises it up to $40. The cutoff calls, the hijack calls, and I look down at ace-8 of clubs on the button. Happy to make the call here with a suited ace on the button. Other players fold. So 4 ways to a flop this time. This time we find a favorable flop. This one's coming down pretty favorable for us. King-8 for all clubs. I think. I might have these cards slightly wrong. In full disclosure, I did not take notes immediately after this hand, but I do know we flopped the joint. So the initial raiser checks. The hijack puts out a bet. He bets $100. The cutoff calls. I'm happy to just flat here. Versus some players, I would be more than happy to put in a raise, but the hijack player in this situation is the aforementioned very capable, very good player. Versus that type of player, I prefer to call a lot more frequently, more than raise. So that's what I do. I just flat call here on the button. Turn brings the 4th club, unfortunately. Turn is the 3 of clubs. But the good news is that the hijack continues betting. This time he bets $200. The cutoff folds, and same game plan, same plan as before. I'm just gonna flat call here. Don't want to announce my hand too strongly. Just gonna flat. River is an offsuit queen. Happy that the board did not pair. Happy to still have the nuts here. And also happy that, once again, the hijack puts in another bet. This time he bets $350. Obviously looking to put in a raise here, and I don't think it's gonna be very easy to get action with any sizing. I think with a large bet, it's just gonna end up blowing him out of the water. With a small bet, it's gonna look very value-y. It's very hard for me to put in a raise here with any card other than the ace of clubs in my hand. So I'm just gonna try and go for small value and just hope to get a crying call. I raised it up to $750. Pretty obvious what I have in my hands here, especially with my opponent being a very smart, very thinking player. He kind of gives it the sigh, thinks for a little bit, but I don't think he's really thinking about too much other than he wishes he hadn't run into it here. Eventually lets it go. So happy to pull down a decent pot here with a suited ace high in clubs hand. This one works out better for us than the ace 5 of clubs did. And of course, happy to get bet into on all 3 streets. All right, one more interesting hand here before the sun comes up and before I go to bed, which is pretty normal for those 2 things to be happening at the same time. The under the gun player limps in. The under the gun +2 player makes it 40. I look down at King, Queen of Hearts in the cutoff, happily call. The button and the small blind call as well. So that means we got another 4-way flop here. Flop comes Jack 8-6 with 2 hearts. King high flush draw for us. Backdoor straight draw. Backdoor 2 pair draw. Backdoor trips draw. Action checks to me, and I think I want to put in a bet here, seeing as I have king high and good equity. So I bet $80. The button and the small blind call, and the initial raiser fold. So 3 ways to a turn card, which comes in offsuit 7. Action checks to me, and I don't think it's the ideal card here. I do think that I should probably be continuing to barrel here, and I don't think I need to bet too big because I don't want to get raised off of my hand. And in that same regard, I think there's merit to checking it as well, because it would suck to face a big raise and be drawing to just a king high flush. So I think betting is slightly better here, but sort of I don't know, I just decided to check it over to the button to see what happens. And good news is that the button checks back, so we're getting to see a free river card here. And river's a good one. River is the 10 of hearts. King high flush comes in, and also seemingly good news is that the small blind puts out a bet, and pretty decent sized bet. That's $330. It's actually over half of his stack. I'm not sure exactly how much he has left, but I want to say something around the neighborhood of 250. I do expect to get called a decent amount of the time if I put him in for his last 250, but I wonder if it's better to just flat and hope that the button comes along as well, perhaps with a straight, since there are 4 to a straight out there now. Not exactly sure, but I do know that it's best to not just snap call. So I kind of Hollywood for a while, act as if I'm thinking it over, maybe with a straight. I decided on the flat call, try and induce the button to make the call as well, but unfortunately he folds, and the small blind shows us 2 pair. That's not going to win this hand. The king high flush is going to win this hand. So we're going to wrap up the session on a high note here. So we actually got into the game for $2,700, just being super card dead, and then a couple of really silly hands that went down. But we managed to recover, stayed patient, all that usual grinded out type stuff. In for 2,700, out for I think 38.20, sounds right. So profit of 11.20 according to my math.